Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. I'm going to review Al Jazeera English. They had two guest speakers speaking for Hagia Sophia, the arguments for and against. And so what I'm going to do is add my arguments in refutation to some of the things that have been said. So let's get into it.
All right, so let's bring in our other guests for today's program. Joining us from Istanbul, we have Mehmet Celik, who is the managing editor of the Turkish newspaper, the Daily Sabah. And from Washington, D.C., we have Mustafa Akyol, who's a senior fellow at the Cato Institute and author of the book Islam Without Extremes, a Muslim Case for Liberty. Welcome to you both. Mustafa, let's start with you. What did you make of what you heard there?
I mean, Mr. Cullen is a voice of reason in a political landscape that is not always very reasonable. And I agree with most of the things he said, but there are a few nuances I would like to add. I mean, if Hagia Sophia was just a mosque, if it was built as a mosque and if it only had the history of a mosque, nobody would have any problem, should have any problem in returning it from a museum, which would be a totally unjust decision, back into a mosque, which is its original purpose. But of course, the complication is Hagia Sophia was built by Christians, served as a cathedral, the most important one for Eastern Christianity for 1,000 years almost, then converted by the Ottoman Empire. And the legality of that from an even Islamic point of view can be discussed. They relied on the Hanafi law. There are different perceptions on Islam because we have in Islamic history cities conquered by Muslims like Jerusalem in which Christian churches were not converted and they were preserved as such. Anyway, what happened under Ottomans happened. And for their time, the Ottomans were a beacon of tolerance, regardless of converting some big churches. And during the Republican era under Ataturk, Hagia Sophia was turned into a museum. Now, I understand, and I even share the offense of any religious believer seeing a place of worship turning into a museum, who has the right to say that, to do that. And Turkey's secular past has other problems that Turkey's religious conservatives are rightly critical about, like bans on religious headscarves. And Turkey's secular past has not been very good for Christian or Jewish minorities as well. However, when you revert back Hagia Sophia to worship, I've been arguing that we Muslims have a right here. We have the right to worship, especially in a Muslim majority country. But we should honor also the Christian heritage. How? Not just by saying, as a tourist, you can come and walk in, but you have a right to worship as well. So for 2 decades, I've argued that the building could be shared in terms of time and space between Muslims and Christians. At least Christians could be given some spot to pray. Second, the most important thing right now is, yes, there's Christian heritage, all the iconography, but as I understand, they will be covered somehow. I don't know the specifications. They have not been explained through curtains or through a light system. These are things that I've heard on the Turkish media. That will be seen, I think, by a lot of Christians as an insult to their heritage, as covering their heritage. And would we Muslims want to see that in the Balkans or somewhere else or in Spain? We wouldn't. And I think we should not do unto others what we don't want to be done to us.
All right. Mehmet Celik in Istanbul, what did you make of what you heard from the president's spokesperson there? U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says that any change to the building's status would diminish its ability to serve humanity as a much-needed bridge between those of differing faith, traditions, and cultures. He's right, isn't he?
Well, first of all, I would like to highlight a few points comment on a few points on what Mustafa just said. He asked whether we Muslims would be happy if we saw the same thing in the Balkans or in Spain. Unfortunately, we cannot see the same thing because the mosques have been destroyed in the Balkans and in Spain. Having said that, one thing that I think we should all agree, regardless of all the debates about its cultural value, historical value, religious symbolism, I think one thing that we all should agree on that this decision is a matter of domestic issue for Turkey as a sovereign state. Of course, we can be critical. Of course, we can judge or discuss it. But with regards to the decision taken by the Turkish authorities, the judicial authorities or executive authorities, I think we should agree that this is a decision that is Turkish sovereign right. When it comes to the international arena, particularly in the West, I think they in a way they think that right now, as of yesterday, the mosque, the Hagia Sophia Museum as of yesterday was a cathedral or it was a church, and now it is being actually returned back to being converted into a mosque. But this place has served as a place of worship for the Muslims since 1453. And I think they should have no worry about whether it's icons or the symbolism inside the structure will lose its meaning or be diminished, because Turkish history does not have such examples of destroying such things that have cultural or historical or religious value. So they will be preserved. But of course, it's a place of worship for the Muslims. And I cannot agree with, as far as I know, with regards to religious laws, Hanafi at least religious laws. A place that has been converted into a mosque cannot serve as a church at the same time.
Okay.
I'm not a religious expert, but that's as far as I know.
Mustafa, what are the risks in this for President Erdogan?
First of all, I'd like to say one thing. Yes, many Ottoman mosques have been destroyed in the Balkans by Serbian or Greek nationals or Bulgarian ones. But that's a shame. And we've protested that as Turks and Muslims. And we didn't say it's the national sovereignty of those countries. Okay. We said it is unfair.
Turkey has not done that.
There are some mosques remaining.
Mustafa, gentlemen, time is very tight here. And there are a lot of things I want to discuss with you. So if you could stick to answering the question.
Hagia Sophia as any part of its structure.
What are the risks in this, Mustafa, for President Erdogan?
Okay, so let's just pause it there. He said, basically, Mustafa Akyol, he said, we're ashamed that the mosques have been destroyed in the Balkans and in Spain. And so he says we shouldn't be following that example. Again, Hagia Sophia isn't destroyed. It's not. It's there. Hagia Sophia is still there and it's not destroyed, unlike our mosques in the Balkans. Now, remember what Mustafa Akyol said. He said, let's listen to this part again.
With most of the things he said, but there are a few nuances I would like to add. If Hagia Sophia was just a mosque, if it was built as a mosque and if it only had the history of a mosque, nobody would have any problem, should have any problem in returning it from a museum, which would be a totally unjust decision, back into a mosque, which is its original purpose. But of course, the complication is Hagia Sophia was built by Christians, served as a cathedral, the most important one for Eastern Christianity for 1,000 years almost, then converted by the Ottoman Empire. And the legality of that from an even Islamic point of view can be discussed. They relied on the Hanafi law. There are different...
Okay, so basically Mustafa Akyol's argument is, if it's built by Christians, if it's owned by Christians for 1,000 years, then it's morally not justifiable for someone else to take it. That's his argument. So why do we only stop at a mosque? Why do we stop at a church? Why don't we then use that same reasoning to everything else? Or do we make one standard for religion and another standard for everything else? Australia was owned by the Aboriginal people for more than 50,000 or 100,000, 200,000 years. And the colonialists have taken those lands. So is it now morally wrong to keep those lands under white sovereignty, should not the white colonialists now return that back to the indigenous? What about America? Mustafa Akyol's from America. Why don't you return America back to the indigenous? Because that was theirs, that was their farmlands, that was their country, that was their agriculture, that was America, that was theirs. And again, so where do you draw the line and say it's unacceptable that someone owns something for 1,000 years, therefore it needs to be given back? That's not a justification, because if that was a rule, then every empire would have to give everything back to the previous empire. It doesn't work. And so why are we using Islam and Muslims as a measuring stick to say, let's see if Muslims and Islam can do it? Why are we using that measuring stick on Muslims and Islam, but we don't use that same measuring stick on the rest? And again, show me where you believe that's a shame. I haven't heard any colonialist or white person say it's a shame. I've only heard lip service. I mean, if it was a shame, okay, let's all agree it is a shame. That invasion is a shame. Let's all agree. Okay, so what's the consequence? What do? Do we give it back? Because if that's what you're demanding the Muslim empire to do, then okay, you got to give back everything based on white Christian heritage. You got to give it back all to the indigenous. So you can't smack the Muslims with one stick and then hold the stick back from your own culture and heritage and history. That would be hypocritical. So again, you say, Mustafa Akyol says, we shouldn't be doing unto others what we don't like doing on ourselves. Fine. Does Mustafa Akyol then point the same finger on white Christian heritage who came to this country and they took the lands of the indigenous? So I want to see a better argument from Mustafa Akyol. Does he use the same standard of argument against the white race? For that same reason, many Muslims lived in the Israel Peninsula. They lost all their land, their farmland. They were pushed Gaza, and guess what? The map of Israel is actually called. It was Palestine. It's now changed to Israel, right? So is Mustafa Akyol also going to argue against the Jews? Well, he has to be consistent and say they need to change the name back to Palestine. They need to give back most of the land back to the Palestinian people. So again, we need some consistency here. And on our website, if you go up to the top, have a read. Christians have converted pagan places of worship into churches. So again, why are we putting one standard for Muslims here and saying, let's just ignore everything else? Because that's exactly what you're doing. I mean, saying that it's all a shame isn't working. It's not solving anything, because if saying it's all a shame that we shouldn't have done any of that, then what are the consequences? And the consequences is, again, if you expect Turkey to give it back, then you've got to expect everything else to be given back. And so first you need to show an example of you giving everything back. And then if you want the Ottomans, the sons of the Ottomans to give things back, then we'll think about that. But you got to first show us your standard and implement your own standard before you point fingers at the Muslims. And also, why didn't Mustafa Akyol and why didn't they all come out and say it was wrong to also turn the Christian church into, it went into a mosque, but then it was turned into a museum? Mustafa Akyol says obviously that's, that was wrong too, because secularism has had their fair share in doing things that are wrong as well. But again, why wasn't Mustafa Akyol writing about this when it remained a museum? They never came out and said it was offending the Christians. I mean, if it's their place of worship, turning it into a museum will just be as offensive as he argues. He says covering the paintings is shameful and wrong as well. But again, the Muslims have said they're going to keep those icons and they're only going to cover it temporarily. I mean, how is that even shameful? That's actually showing respect to the paintings and to the other artifacts. It's temporarily covering. That's a form of respect to say, we don't want to interfere. We don't want your Christian heritage to interfere into our prayer. I mean, I guess that would be a sign of respect rather than disrespect.
Arguing that we Muslims have a right here. We have the right to worship, especially in a Muslim majority country. But we should honor also the Christian heritage. How? Not just by saying, as a tourist, you can come and walk in, but you have a right to worship as well. So for 2 decades, I've argued that the building could be shared in terms of time and space between Muslims and Christians. At least Christians could be given some spot to pray.
I mean, that argument doesn't work as well because, again, when Fatih Sultan conquered that place, it wasn't just a masjid. It wasn't just a church. It was also a place of political delegation. We've already proven that in our website. And so for us to then give that back would defeat the whole purpose of why it was all conquered. That's number one. Number two, there's a separation between, it's really interesting because these secularists say there's a separation between church and state, right? That Islam and Muslims should not interfere with state law, right? This is what they say. But then they show another standard and say that Islam and Christianity should worship in the same church, same mosque. It should be half church, half mosque. Fine. Okay, no worries. But you need to apply that same standard of logic to your own system. That if you're allowing under secularism non-religious values and laws and a place where you govern by secular liberalism, then apply that same standard and allow Sharia law to come in and also constitute the people. I mean, come on. You got to be consistent now. If you're demanding a mosque and a church to come together as one and worship the same God, then, worship separate gods in the same building, then we should have that same standard in our constitution. In Turkey, for example, that the constitution is run on secular liberalism, right? There's a separation between, mosque and state. So, again, if you're going to demand one standard, basically what I'm saying is you're demanding one standard on religion and a separate standard on your own constitution, right? So if you want us to allow Christian worshippers to now come into Hagia Sophia and be part of our worship, you have your area, we have our area under the same domain, then you're going to have to do that in other aspects of life. Are you going to now consolidate that? Because if you don't, then you're being hypocritical by applying one standard to Islam and a separate standard for secular liberalism. And again, we need to be consistent. We've already provided multiple evidences on our website that Athens, the biggest city in Athens, in Greece, does not have a single public mosque. Okay, so they constantly ask us to keep the peace and demand, equality and religious tolerance, and we need to come together and, share the building. And they want us to share the building in Hagia Sophia, and they don't even allow a mosque, a public mosque in Athens, Greece. I mean, again, we're making one argument, one standard against Islam and Muslims, and then we ignore over the border. Why is that? And the Turkish spokesperson has already said in this actual report that Christians have given many, many churches. There's I think it's about 16 churches in Istanbul. There's more than, 20 to 30 in Ankara. And there's approximately something like close to 400 churches in Turkey. And you want us to share Hagia Sophia now, while all of those churches are there under the democracy of Turkey. So it's interesting how they want a separation between mosque and state, or state and church, but a separation between Islam and Christianity. Oh, that's just incoherent. That's unethical. That's morally not justifiable. They have to worship under the same dome. They have to. I mean, that's got to happen. But religion getting integrating into politics. Oh no, that's got to be separate now. We've got to keep that out of the parliamentary. That's ancient. That can't interfere into politics, right? But that now somehow becomes morally justifiable, ethical. It becomes a sign of tolerance, justifiable. Wow, that's interesting.
Things I want to discuss with you. So if you could stick to answering the question.
Any part of its structure.
What are the risks in this, Mustafa, for President Erdogan?
Well, domestically, it's a popular move, so I don't think domestically it will be a problem. But there might be international problems. And President Erdogan himself, a year ago, said that on TV. A year ago, he was actually denying that Hagia Sophia should be reopened as a mosque. And he said to an audience, and that's viral right now on Turkish Twitter, he said, if you do this, do you think what will happen to our mosques around the world? So he was saying that we should not provoke nationalism by taking a nationalist move in our own country, nationalism against Muslims elsewhere. I fully agree with that, President Erdogan's view on that. I don't know what has changed in a year. He just made a quick decision that it should be a mosque again. It will be popular. It will, I think, rally his base. And it is being supported by other parties. I'm not denying that. But the question is, Turkey has power. Turkey has the right to do this. That's fine.
Okay.
But what kind of a message are we giving to the world? And as a Turk myself, I think we could have given a better message.
Mehmet,
you know what? This is probably the best message we can give to the world, because it goes to show that just like Westerners can hold the iron fist and send a message of peace to the world by, removing Saddam Hussein from office, going and bombing the Muslim nations in the Middle East, bombing Iraq, bombing all over the North African continents, in Yemen, bombing all of those places, and removing Gaddafi, for example, from Libya, under what? Under the goose of democracy, liberalism, and promoting what they believe is justifiable. And they never thought about keeping the peace with the Muslims. Sending what? Almost 10 million, $20 million of funds into Israel to bomb the Muslims, giving it to the Jews, funding them, their weapons, jets, aeroplanes. Where does the money come from? America. They don't think about keeping the peace. So how are they even the bearers of peace? How are they even the model of peace? So what does Muslims in Turkey have to prove? We don't have to prove nothing to the West. Absolutely nothing. You're the last people we need to negotiate with on peace terms. You've never held the peace. You've never kept the peace. You've constantly bombed and killed Muslims. Right? So That's not an argument. That, Recep Tayyip Erdogan has to keep the peace and make all the Christians happy and not disturb it. But no one argued about not keeping the peace when he's bombed and invaded the Muslim world. And we documented it on our article. No one demanded that Greece is not keeping the peace when it's got captives, Turkish captives. Either 5 or 6 Turkish captives who plotted and who were responsible for the coup in 2016, the terrorist coup that killed almost 300 to 400 people in Turkey. And that helicopter flew and landed in Greece, and Greece said, we're not returning them. They're harboring terrorists. They're harboring Turkish citizens who are terrorists. They're harboring them in Greece, and they're not giving them back to Turkey so they can be judged and trialed. None of them, no one got up and said, Greece is not keeping the peace with its neighbours. So again, it's like they put one standard on Islam, the Muslims, President Erdogan, and another standard on themselves.
To what extent does this decision, picking up on what you were just saying, to what extent does this decision damage Islam's reputation or image in the rest of the world? Does it matter what anyone thinks outside of Islam?
I think it does. We Muslims have national sovereignty. We deserve power, but I think we should show virtue in the name of our faith. And I think one of the strongest virtues of Islam has been pluralism, tolerance, and respecting other faiths. If we rather emphasize conquest, which is a part of our history, but something maybe not that relevant today, I think we will not be doing a service to our faith. So I'm happy a lot of people, Muslims, will worship in Hagia Sophia. I look forward to doing that myself. But I wish to see that Christians, when come to the building, they will see their heritage, and they might even have a spot for prayer, which is still not impossible.
All right.
So I'd like to ask the same question. Has not having a single mosque in Athens damaged the image of Christianity? Has not a single Senate office allowed Sharia law to also govern in our judicial system, being banned from governing, being banned from allowed, also damaged the image of secular liberalism? I mean, come on, we need some consistency here. Has it? Because, again, there's a separation between Islam and a secular state. There's a separation between Christianity and a secular state. So has that also damaged the reputation? And when we say separation, it's not even a separation. It's a complete diminishing of religious authority, because they actually say religion is something personal. And you've got to keep it to yourself. The society cannot be governed by religion. So what they're doing is they're claiming that secular liberalism transcends all religion. So it's not at the same footing. It won't allow for it to be at the same footing. So where is the equality there? There's no equality there. So does that also damage secular liberalism methodology? Does it damage that as well? We need to be consistent here. Again, one standard for Islam and another standard for Christianity, and then another standard for secular liberalism, which in itself is like a religion. I really don't know how it's damaging the reputation of Islam when Islam has allowed over 400 churches in Turkey. Oh, but because of this one single one, it damages the whole reputation of Islam. One single, and it wasn't just a church. In our website, we've provided evidence. It was a political delegation. That's where the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, it was owned by a lot, but the Byzantine Empire believed that this is their power. It was used for a political delegation. So once you conquered Hagia Sophia, it means you've conquered it. And so the Muslims during Fatih Sultan's time, they gave them so much peace treaties to agree to, and they rejected it. And so it was conquered, it was taken. So now it becomes under the sovereignty of Muslims. And just like White Christian Heritage comes here, they get to choose which buildings they keep, which buildings to erect, where to erect it. It wasn't their land, but they took it from the indigenous, and then they got to choose how they use that land and how they wanted its purpose to be. So again, it's like one standard again for Islam and another standard for colonial history. It's ridiculous and it's so hypocritical, it makes me want to chuck. So there you have it, folks. They're the arguments and they're the responses, and